Hello, Americans. I'm Kent McNall. It's Constitution time. Today we're going to start out with some math. Because as of right now, our president-elect is still not able to be in full transition mode because of some pretty dubious claims about massive fraud in our elections. So much fraud that across 6 or 7 states, so many votes would be changed that the result of the election could change. And I frankly just don't think that's true at all, and I think most Americans know that's not true. And the result of this is going to be a real loss of time in something that's already a difficult task, which is transition to the new president and the new government. It's hard not to get angry about that, especially when some of the claims, in fact, some of the claims that are the foremost claims at this point, the ones that are always mentioned, are things like dead people voted. So I decided to do just a little bit of math. And it's pretty easy to see that, yes, dead people probably did vote. And here's why. There's 330 million people in the United States of America. And let's be very linear in our math here because I know there's going to be variations, but let's say that everyone lives to be 80 years old. Logically, 1 in 80 people would die every year. Well, that's 4 million people a year. It's a little bit more than 4, but we're rounding. If 4 million people die every year, and there's 365 days in a year, then again, rounding just a little bit, about 4,500 people die every single day. And again, if we make some broad stroke assumptions, 4,500 people die every day, I think we'd all agree that at least half of those are older folks. And obviously of voting age. Well, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,200 people a day. Now, we all know that only half of us vote, and maybe more than half of older folks vote. But however you slice it, you've got at least 1,000 to 1,500 people who voted dying every day that a mail-in ballot can be sent. If we just count mail-in ballots, because I assume not very many people died on the same day they voted, although some would have statistically. So if you had a 10-day period in which people could vote, then you've got at least 15,000 dead people who voted. And they weren't breaking any laws, and their kin weren't breaking any laws. It's just a statistic when you have 330 million people that vote. Just as real voter fraud happened, there's no way it's not going to happen with that many people. It just doesn't happen very often at all. And everyone involved in the election knows that's the case. Yet we still are winking and nodding at the chief executive of the land who is carrying this forward, much to our detriment as a country, much loss of respect to us as a country. And I don't think we should really be tolerating that. I really don't. I don't think there should be any more winks and nods. I think the politicians who have been reluctant to confront this powerful, powerful being should let that go. And we should get on with the business of transitioning to a new government, which we badly need to do. What I want to talk about is some of the constitutional challenges that the new president will face. And they're not new. They've been going on for the last 2 or 3 presidencies. And they revolve around ultimate partisanship, my number one threat to democracy. But they've created new paradigms of government as the traditional roles of the executive and legislative branch seem to have flip-flopped. So to be practical about it, what does that mean? Well, the new president has already announced that one of the first things he'll be doing is spending his time undoing what the last president did via executive order, which, as we know, the current incumbent president did the same thing with the last president's executive orders. So every 4 or 8 years, our president's first duty is going to be to undo most everything that the last president did. Now, the difficulty comes in because the presidents aren't supposed to be doing what they're doing through executive orders. There is a place for executive orders, but it's not to replace legislation. But the presidents that come in find that even if they have both chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives, it's very, very difficult to get anything done, even if they do have that. If they don't have that, it's almost impossible. So when you can't get anything done by legislation, the executives have been doing it by executive order. Well, there's things the executive can't do, as we all know as Americans. They can't spend money, for example. But the current executive found a way around that by taking budgeted, allocated funds and using it for something else. In this case, the wall that Mexico was going to pay for. One of the challenges that I see is that an incoming President Biden won't necessarily go to those extents. He won't break those rules. Although the rules have been broken, it makes them easier for the next president to break, right? But if he doesn't, he's not going to get very much done. Because another paradigm that's grown up is that the president or the majority leader of the Senate is acting more like the president of the United States, with veto power not only on a bill that's been passed, but veto power on a bill even being considered. We all know that. Hundreds, probably thousands of bills now, never even debated, never even making it to the floor of the Senate. And this is now a paradigm of our government that has arisen because the majority leader of the Senate, not the president of the Senate, the majority leader of the Senate has too much power granted to him by the rules of the Senate. I don't think that one of the governing bodies should be able to make their own rules such that the leader of that body suddenly has more power than the president of the United States. But is that not what has happened? Nothing gets by Mitch. Nothing can even be considered. And the only way that would be overturned is if his seemingly unbreakable Republican majority were to finally break ranks. Have you noticed that the only rank breaking that really happens is the absolute maximum amount that can happen without changing the result of an important vote? You have the Susan Collinses and the Mitt Romneys that, yeah, they'll vote again, but only if their vote doesn't change the result. One of the important votes, I think it was for the tax cut that the president got through, which is his really almost only landmark legislation in his 4 years, just as the Affordable Care Act was Barack Obama's almost only landmark legislation because they got it in the first 2 years. Even that was a tie broken by the vice president because one of the Democrats flipped, the predictable flipping Joe Manchin of West Virginia. So these paradigms have grown up and are now really almost the law of the land. And this was not the intention of the framers of the Constitution, to have these roles flip-flop and make it so impossible to get anything done. And that's the real problem that we Americans should really be pushing back on. We are no longer represented in the Congress, in the Senate. The party is the only thing that's represented. It is our responsibility to send people to these bodies who are people of conscience, who are and who are hopefully conscious, which apparently the president of the Senate, Chuck Grassley, may not be right now since he has COVID. Forgot to mention that. I made a decision I wasn't going to watch a bunch of news today, so I only flipped it on for like a half an hour. And in a half an hour, I learned that the guy in charge of the security for the election, Chris somebody, was fired by the president because he said something the president doesn't like, the truth, about the security of the election, about it being the most secure election in the history of our country. Out. He's fired. And Chuck Grassley, God bless him and keep him well, has COVID, 87 years old. And I truly hope that he's all right. We're supposed to send people of conscience into these offices, people who, while they may be part of a party, have their own mind and know the difference between right and wrong and are thinking about our people and our country as they make these votes, whatever they might be. And part of the way that we know that you have this ultimate partisanship is very few of them ever vote against the party lines. And again, even those few that are allowed, I say allowed to do so, are only allowed to do so when it won't change the result. Would Mitt Romney really vote against the party if it were going to change the result? My guess is he would not. And that's got to change. We've got to let our legislators know in no uncertain terms and in huge volumes that we expect them to move the country forward. We can't only move the country forward once every 10 years when all three chambers of, the House and the Senate and the presidency are in the same party. That is not going to work. We have too much to do. We have too much to accomplish as a country. We have too many things that are broken that need to be fixed. And we have got to let them know in no uncertain terms what we expect from them. And I truly hope that no American, or at least very few Americans, want this deadlock that we have, where absolutely nothing real happens, nothing of substance happens. Now, I know many are in favor of less government and privatizing the things that the government has been responsible for, ranging from NASA to the post office. And I admit, too, that I love watching SpaceX do their thing. But the simple reality is that the government, NASA, were sending fully manned spacecraft into space 50 years ago. After only, this is not quite accurate, but once JFK set that goal, we're talking less than 10 years. And how long has it taken private enterprise to do it? I think there are some things that require and benefit from the full support and the full funding and the full might of the funding of all the people in the United States behind that thing. And some things for that reason government can be good at. Would we have the digital age that we have now if government had been in charge of it? Probably not. So we have to find the right things to throw the weight and the might of the government and the full might of the people of the United States behind. These paradigms that have arisen so quickly, really in the last 20 years, kind of ushered in a bit at the end of the Clinton presidency because of his foibles and some of the real anger that grew up from that. George W. Bush probably would have suffered more from these paradigms if it had not been for 9/11. There's been a lot of talk and publicity around the fact that the poor transition that they had because of the 2000 election made a contribution to 9/11 because they were just that much less prepared. And when you're talking about something as big and as complex as the government of the United States and taking over as a new administration, weeks can make that huge difference. And our adversaries around the world look for this time. You know, if they're going to do something squirrely, this is a time frame that things can be missed. So it's got to be as short and effective as possible. But this paradigm has grown up, really starting in the Obama administration, where the leader of the Senate just literally said, you will get nothing passed. You will name no justice to the Supreme Court. And what has that really produced? Yes, they have justices in the Supreme Court, but how did our country move forward in these times when we so badly need infrastructure, so badly need healthcare reform? We cannot afford to sit still for years and years and years because of this new paradigm of government that's grown up. And we, the people, are going to have to change it, because if we're sending people to office who truly will not do anything but toe the party line and will not use their own minds and will not be individuals when the time comes for them to be individuals, who do not have that courage, we are sending the wrong people. Here in my own home state of Washington, you know, we have two senators that I call them the invisible duo. I never see them. I mean, what politicians do you not see on TV these days? And I don't want that to necessarily mean that I think they're not doing anything, but I'm not sure how effective they're being. They're very senior. I think one of our senators is the second most senior senator. And while it's tempting to hang on to that person because of the power that you feel they get from that seniority, part of which is real, what about leadership? What about making things happen that need to happen? I think that we've all got to really rethink who and what we're sending to be our elected representatives. I also want to share with you an idea I'm having, which is that media is part of the problem. And I think the opportunity exists for us to change our paradigm of where we get our information. And it may be, and I'm personally doing some research on this, that because of the way I'm talking to you right now, this paradigm that's grown up, that's so easy to do, so easy for people to get on and have a way to communicate to other Americans or people around the world, that it may be possible in the future, if not now, for us to get our information from each other. No advertising, no executive board telling us what we can and can't say. Just people being honest with each other. And yes, it's quite a bit of editorializing, because I don't have a worldwide staff of reporters out there. But if we get our information from each other rather than from the media, it may be that we have a better chance to use our own brain and think for ourselves. And what we have to try to do is be careful not to pass on bad information, and to know when we're listening to someone's opinion, which if you watch this program, you are hearing a lot of opinion, no question about it. And you have opinions of your own, and I respect that. So I'll be talking more about that in episodes to come. Thank you for watching this evening. Be safe, be well, and keep yourself and your family safe from COVID. It's worse than it's ever been right now, so don't give it any kind of advantage. Good night, Americans.